So it's official. This movie has made me want to purchase Ninja Turtles memorabilia. The very first piece of memorabilia that I purchased. Turtle Power! I saw over the weekend Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which is brought to us by Jeff Rowe and co-written by Seth Rogen, starring various people including Paul Rudd, Ice Cube, Seth Rogen himself, Jackie Chan, Maya Rudolph, and Rose Byrne. And as far as the main Ninja Turtles, I don't know any of the actors' names. But the premise is very simple. Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael are living in the sewers being raised by their adoptive father Splinter, who's a walking, talking rat. And they feel the need to go up to the surface in New York City in order to experience the real world. But due to the bad experiences of Splinter, their father, he tries really hard to keep them sheltered. But as far as my experience with the Ninja Turtles, I will be honest with you guys, I am a very, very casual fan. I don't know anything really that deep about the Ninja Turtles. I've seen little bits of the 1980s show where Rob Paulsen, who voices Yakko in Animaniacs, also voices Raphael. And I've seen a little bit of the first film from 1990 or 1989 whenever it came out. And I saw the 2014 live-action Michael Bay produced film, and I reviewed it a long time ago. It was way back in the early days that I was starting out, reviewing movies at least. And I was not really impressed. I thought it was alright, but I gotta be honest, I don't remember most of what happened in that movie. I remember certain images, like them going down the mountain in the snow, and Michelangelo's line of, "Oh yeah, we're teenagers, but we can have adult conversations." Gratefully, no dialogue like that is in this movie. And there was a sequel that came out 2 years after that, and I didn't even bother to see it. You know, I think it's a big indicator that maybe the Ninja Turtles don't belong in live action. Well, maybe they do, but the problem is the people making them. They don't have people who have enough respect for the material. They're just there to make a paycheck with it. It's really easy to make that kind of argument, but you guys get what I mean. All that aside, I think the animation approach for the Ninja Turtles is probably the best approach to use for the foreseeable future. And when I saw the previews for it, I only saw maybe a couple ads for it online. I thought this looks very similar to the Spider-Verse movies. And I initially wrote it off thinking, it's probably not going to be that special. And based on some of the reviews that I've seen, like from Sean Chandler especially, or Chris Stuckman, I decided, okay, let's see what all the fuss is about. And I am pleased to say that I had a really good time with this one. It's very colorful, fun, energetic, and has a really good sense of heart underneath its surface. There's a few other people besides Seth Rogen, but Evan Goldberg is another writer that's credited along with the story part of the whole thing. This actually in some ways feels like what Seth Rogen would make if he was in a Ninja Turtles movie, and he is in this movie, but his fingerprints are pretty clear if you know his style of writing. And then also, he allows the four leads to play around and improv the dialogue. I even watched a couple of interviews with the young actors when they said, hey, this isn't really what we would say. And they asked the director and the writers, could we maybe change it up a little bit? They got the go-ahead, and the interplay between the turtles feels very natural. And the best part, they're actually voiced by young kids, well, young teenagers. Because a lot of times, as we know in Hollywood, they tend to cast actors and actresses that are much older than we're told that they are in the movies. Might have something to do with child labor laws, I don't know exactly. But especially with the voice of Donatello, he legitimately sounds, to me anyway, like he was 13 years old. And if I had to pick a favorite Ninja Turtle after this movie, it's Donatello. I can relate to him a great deal. He's the one who seems to know everything and has all this really crazy knowledge that might not be really worth talking about on the surface, but actually proves to be very useful in the long run. I have felt that way in plenty of situations where I know a lot of stuff and people say, really? How do you know all this stuff? Why are we even talking about, oh, okay, no, that actually really helps. I also like seeing Leo finally getting a chance to become a leader when he tries to assert his authority over his three brothers, and they're not really taking him seriously, but they eventually come to recognize and respect him as their leader. Because to my knowledge, and talking with some other Ninja Turtles fans over the years, he kind of gets the short end of the stick in some of the movies anyway. And when he tries to use that raspy voice to sound very commanding, Donatello says, "You sound like you got bronchitis." There's even a scene where they sneak into this outdoor movie night without being spotted by any human being there, and Ferris Bueller is playing. Someone who loves John Hughes movies, especially 80s films, I got a big kick out of that. And there were some little kids in the theater that I saw this in that didn't really know what that was. And I thought, ho, just you wait until you're older, buddy. You'll have a different perspective. But really at its core, the movie has a really good message about acceptance of somebody else, despite the fact that they look different on the outside. They want to be accepted by others in the world, due to their father's experiences and him being rejected by other people when he grew into a anthropomorphic rat, if that's the right way to say it. People saw him as a freak and shunned him out of society, and he's been hiding in the sewers ever since. To my knowledge, this is a very different take on the character of Splinter. Jackie Chan's voice took a second for me to get over because it was clearly obvious obvious. I think he was actually a good fit because I think he has that very fatherly aura about him where he is very loving of his children. Not a lovey-dovey type of thing, but a very protective kind of love. And I also really like how they play out his arc when he eventually goes to the streets of New York during the climax of the movie and he sees April O'Neil's broadcast painting the turtles in a positive light where everybody's going to save them. He realizes that he was in the wrong and revises his opinion on humankind. On the subject of April O'Neil, this is also a very different take on the character. She's got social anxiety, she's not very assertive and tough like she's been portrayed in the other iterations of the Ninja Turtles. People in her class call her April O'Puke because she puked on camera while giving the morning announcements, and she decides to take a behind-the-scenes type of approach of reporting, but due to her connection with the Turtles, she's able to get past all that stuff and eventually putting herself in front of the camera in a citywide broadcast, while still puking on camera, but she also learns not to shame herself into isolation. The other side characters that we get, the antagonist, if you will, Superfly, who's voiced by Ice Cube, he's someone who was wronged by humans in the opening of the movie, as we see when he was raised by Baxter Stockman. Due to that experience, he sees humans in an evil light and wants to wipe them all out and take over the world. Some people will laugh at that and say that's way too stupid of a motivation, but this is the Ninja Turtles we're talking about. This is not exactly like Batman versus the Joker or anything, like the duality of man. This is very much a Saturday morning cartoon type of story. If you don't like that or don't want that, well, you've been warned. But inevitably, I was able to let it go. And Ice Cube is actually quite good as Superfly. Paul Rudd makes an appearance as this one character who just likes to hang around and kind of goes with the flow, but inevitably takes the Turtles' side. Seth Rogen, I think, voices either Bebop or Rocksteady. I don't know which one is which. Again, I'm a casual fan or mostly a noob with the Ninja Turtles, so just please don't crucify me. And a very brief voice acting part from Giancarlo Esposito as Baxter Stockman. Hearing his voice, I thought, Moff Gideon. How fitting. And Maya Rudolph voices the evil scientist who tries to milk the Ninja Turtles of their goo or something. They hype up these names in the previews, but they only really have small parts. It's a way to get people into the theater, I guess. I'm not really upset about that. I was also surprised to see that the score was done by Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, the lead vocalist of Nine Inch Nails, and he also did the musical score for Social Network, Gone Girl, and Patriots Day. Really impressed with the score that he did here. Also going into the animation, which is clearly inspired by Spider-Verse in some ways. But it's not a complete rip-off either. I think it's enough of a 3D type of feel while also having the same look of a drawing that a comic book artist would come up with. And I like that this type of animation style is starting to come back into play. It kind of started a while back, at least I noticed with the Peanuts movie in 2015. Then Spider-Verse came along a few years later, and now it's become more of a staple. Very erratic and off-kilter, but all in the right ways. So inevitably, the Turtles are able to defeat Superfly, and they end up going to high school, which is something that they've always wanted to do. And we get a mid-credit scene, which is a epilogue/tease for a future sequel. They're enjoying their high school life, Leo's hanging out with April, but then we see the evil scientist watching from afar with Superfly back in his fly form in a test tube, and she says to her assistant, while the camera goes off to this one area of New York City, we see a figure with all these knives over his wardrobe, and she says, "Bring me the Shredder." We all knew, I guess, that Shredder was going to come in. He is the arch nemesis of the Ninja Turtles. And you know what, to be honest, I'm not really upset if they're going to make a sequel to this. I would be more than happy to see one. So those are my thoughts on TMNT Mutant Mayhem. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are if you've seen it. And as always, see you in the next one.